Minimum wage. You can't dictate what to pay. NLC replies governors. The Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, has faulted the comments credited to governors that states should determine their minimum wage in their domains. This notion is not only dictatorial but also undermines the very essence as well as the model adopted for creating a national minimum wage in Nigeria, the NLC said in a Friday statement by its head of Information and Public Affairs, Benson Yupa. Labor unions, the government, and the private sector have been locked in negotiations over a new minimum wage for months. Threat to workers' welfare. In a meeting earlier this week, the Southern Governors Forum argued that the minimum wage should not be uniform. States should pay what they can afford, they insisted. The forum discussed the minimum wage issues demanded by labor and unanimously agreed that the minimum wage should be reflective of the cost of living and ability to pay, and each state be allowed to negotiate their minimum wage, the governors said in a communique. But the NLC has faulted the governor's move, saying it threatens the welfare of Nigerian workers and the national economy. The concept of a national minimum wage is not arbitrary. It represents a national wage floor, a baseline below which no worker in the law should be paid. This threshold is a collective agreement that ensures a minimum standard of living for every worker in the law. The governor's demand to unilaterally determine the minimum wage negates this principle and threatens the welfare of Nigerian workers and the national economy, the union said. It is important to remind the governors that the national minimum wage is not synonymous with the individual pay structures of the states, which they implement religiously, reflecting their unique financial capabilities and circumstances. This diversity in pay structures underscores the flexibility that already exists within the system, allowing states to reward their workers in alignment with their financial realities. The NLC berated governors and political office holders for their extravagant lifestyles. Why is there no hue and cry when political office holders across the nation receive uniform salaries as determined by revenue mobilization, allocation, and fiscal commission? The statement asked. This double standard, which pits a few privileged against the majority poor, is an issue that should be of concern to those who love this country. A tough path. Negotiations for a new minimum wage have been on the national front burner for months. The removal of fuel subsidy and the floating of the naira, which pushed the cost of inflation to new highs, further heightened the conversations about a new wage structure for workers. During the negotiations, labor unions and the government have shifted grounds, but have yet to reach a consensus. Workers had embarked on a warning strike, shutting down critical sectors of the economy like power to press home their demands. The organized private sector under the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, had warned against paying a minimum wage higher than N62,000. That was after the Federal Executive Council, FEC, stepped down a memo on the minimum wage for more consultations. Now, if it goes above N62,000, you have created 2 or 3 different dynamics. 1. You have set the tone for non-compliance. That is 1. Because if I cannot pay, I just can't pay. Now, you have created a problem for the judiciary. All employees who are not satisfied have the right, according to the Act, to go to the National Industrial Court. NECA's Director General Adewale Oyerin said.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning to you. So let me get your initial reaction to the Federal Executive Council decision to step down the memorandum on the new national minimum wage. What effect or implications do you think this would definitely have for workers and the Nigerian economy?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad decision by the president and the FEC in particular. The reason is in a case like this, when there are negotiations and there are terms on the table, this time around we're having multi-party discussion concerning the minimum wage. And I strongly believe that the president's intention to consult widely is in the interest of other stakeholders, so that, the federal government doesn't reach a point where they agree the minimum wage with the labor or the organized labor, and it turns that other stakeholders are not even happy about it. And what it leads to, it's a lot of negative reactions from other stakeholders. So it's okay, it's even okay that the labor should understand that dimension of negotiation, because in negotiation you have the worst alternative to negotiated agreement, which is what now you also have the best alternative to negotiated agreements. So at some point there will be a meeting point where all stakeholders should agree. A win-win is what I believe the president is looking for. Thank you.
And so many factors have come up amidst these discussions, like sustainability, viability, and also productivity of stakeholders, the local governments, the private sector, and also states to pay whatever is agreed. But talk to us about the factors that may have been considered in ensuring that this figure is reached. And, speak to the facts about some persons that say the federal government is also using this opportunity to buy time.
Yeah, well, let me quickly take the last one. I don't think the federal government is using this to buy time. I believe they are being very reasonable. You mentioned something around affordability. There are certain factors that we must put into consideration when we are looking at the minimum wage. Is affordability and sustainability. These are very critical factors. If you afford it now, can you sustain it going forward? I think that is part of what the FEC, the president in particular, is saying, that let us consult widely, let us check our numbers, let us be very sure that if the federal government can afford it, can the state governors afford it, or the state government? Can the local government afford it? Can organized private sector afford this? So I believe that the case of affordability and sustainability is what is being considered utmost. Otherwise, if the decision is taken without this, it may backfire. It may lead to a situation where the minimum wage becomes difficult for the state governors or the state government, as the case may be, the local government and organized private sector to be able to pay. And I don't think it's buying time. However, I think the federal government should state a time for their consultation so that it doesn't seem as if it's left, open like that. I think there should be a time where they should come together, and the time should not be too far into the future. Thank you.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because those who are arguing that that's probably a delay tactic, but the Nigerian Labour Congress has actually insisted on 250,000 naira, while the federal government and the state government is saying that they don't want to go beyond 62,000 naira. But the question I would like to ask you is, what do you think would be a fair and realistic minimum wage, considering the current economic situation?
The fair, considering the current one, looking at the states, in some quarters I was mentioning between 200 and 250. But if you consider the case of affordability and sustainability, I think 100,000 would not be bad, sincerely. It will not be bad. Because you see, when you sit with labor on 250,000, the inflationary reaction will be more terrible on the nation. And it will make the country to even lose more, in terms of inflationary push, on so many prices of items. So reasonably looking at, affordability, sustainability, as well as inflationary reaction, I think reasonably 100,000 will not be bad. It will not be bad.
Sorry about that. So you're saying 100,000, but the organized private sector is also, saying that 62,000 naira will be something that is fair. I'm not sure whether you would agree, because it is one thing, just like you said, it's one thing for you to propose an amount of money, it's another thing for you to have the capacity or capability to pay the workers, because we have them in the millions. So if you're saying 100,000, against what backdrop? How do you break it down? Considering the economic reality?
No, I didn't get the last part, please.
Yeah, so I'm saying that you saying 100,000 naira would be fair. What parameters did you actually consider for you to arrive at that figure?
Okay, you need to look at affordability, sincerely. Let's look at internally generated revenue for the state governments. Let's start from there, from the local governments. How many local governments will be able to afford that? Let's be very sincere. Knowing fully well that the cost of governance is also increasing. Cost of operation, cost of managing offices, even cost of capital project is going on. So these are parameters we need to look into. Another parameter we need to look into is the inflationary reaction. If we push from where we are to 250, I want to tell you the inflationary reaction, by my own assessment, will go up by about 50%. And that will not be too good for the nation. The third factor we should look into is the government revenue. Check out the government revenue in the last 1 year and match it with what they want to pay going forward. So these are factors that should be considered. These are parameters that made me to think that 100,000 should not be bad. Government should be able to afford 100,000. Look at the revenue flow. The state government, the local government, the organized private sector, yes, they have other places they're spending money, but 100,000 would not be bad at this point.
And that 100,000 naira figure you place it on, let's compare it with what Labour's template is. A family of 6, 4 children, and a mother and a father. 100,000 naira, looking at the inflation that we are facing currently. How will that work?
Yeah, if we have to look at it that way, this is also time for people to know that we need to work on thin budgets. We can't get it laboriously or elaborately as the case may be. 100,000, I'll say, is manageable, in quotes, for families. It's not something that I strongly believe that it's sustainable for families, but manageable. Let us know these two factors.
Thanks for tuning in to Smart Okason TV show. Keep exploring, stay curious, and never stop getting the latest information happening around. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share to keep the intellect flowing. Until next time, keep sharpening and be smart.